And we're back in the car like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Monday evening here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. So we have a birthday episode, but I'm not going to do a conventional retrospective because this individual is maybe a little bit too, not that he's obscure, but for people under 35, he might be very obscure. So I'm just going to go over why this is an important individual, and I'm going to focus on what I think is the best film he was ever in. Billy Bob Thornton, actor, writer, Oscar winner, turns 70 today. He was born in Arkansas on August 4th, 1955. And Billy Bob Thornton, a kind of apocryphal story about him, his early days in the movie business, which I feel like it's probably true because he told the story in such a way there was no way, like he didn't make it up. And then the other gentleman in the story confirmed it as far as I know. So there is a famous filmmaker named Billy Wilder. To a certain percentage of Hollywood directors who got to the scene, let's say 70s, 80s, 90s, such as Cameron Crowe, Billy Wilder is the guy. The previous generation, the guy who made the similar kinds of movies where he could do straight up comedies, he could blend comedy and drama, or he could just make serious dramas. The previous generation's version of Billy Wilder was Preston Sturges. Again, this is just my opinion. You could Google this and be like, this guy's a fucking idiot. But this is what my film history background is telling me. So Billy Wilder lived a long life. In fact, when Cameron Crowe was preparing Jerry Maguire in 1995, he wanted Billy Wilder to actually play the role of the sports agent that is Tom Cruise's Jerry Maguire's hero. If you haven't seen that film in a while, there's not an important character, but somebody who shows up every now and then to dispense wisdom. It was supposed to be Billy Wilder, but they couldn't work it out. Or maybe Billy, at the time, he was probably in his 90s, he wasn't feeling up to doing the role, whatever it was. They ended up not using him. But supposedly, as a young, struggling actor and somebody who had done a few things at writing, I don't know if he had made any money from his writing, Billy Bob Thornton, I think, was working as a waiter or, doing a temporary gig to put food on the table, like Larry David drove a cab for however many years before Seinfeld. So Billy Bob Thornton, I think, was at some sort of a function where he was a waiter, an usher. It was something where Billy Wilder was in attendance. And, Billy Wilder was probably in his 70s at the time. And Billy Bob, I don't know if he knew somebody or said, can you introduce me to this guy? But somehow he had an audience with Billy Wilder, who's presumably films he loved. Billy Wilder did amazing movies like Stalag 17, The Major and the Minor with Ginger Rogers and William Powell. He was just an extraordinary filmmaker. So Billy Bob met Billy Wilder, and he told him, I don't know if he was hoping that Wilder had a connection that he could maybe use, but it was something to the effect of, I'm a young writer, an actor, and can you give me any advice? Can you give me any advice? And Billy Wilder supposedly said to Billy Bob Thornton, you don't have the look of a leading man, but you do have a good look. I can see it. I can see it. And I think that your entry into the business is the writing. You mentioned that you were a writer first. I think you need to write a really good script and somehow get it made. And that's how you're going to have a career. I don't know that the business works in such a way that somebody who looks like a supporting actor, a character actor, is just going to make their entrance. I think you just have to focus on your writing. And if it's good enough, your career will take care of itself. Just have faith. There's something like that. So Billy Bob Thornton focused on his writing, and he wrote a screenplay in around 1990, which ended up being a movie called One False Move. This was a key for him. He was already in his 30s at this point. But getting that made, and I'm pretty sure he plays a supporting role in that. It's been so long. But this was a film that was a different kind of, it looks like it's going to be an action movie, but it's more of a noir, slow burn thriller. It doesn't do what we're expecting. It goes in different directions. And it was a film that both Siskel and Ebert latched onto as being something other than what they were expecting when they sat in their preview screening to, or with other critics and whatnot. and I'm pretty sure they both had it in their top 10 of films released in 1992. That was a year where famously Clint won for Unforgiven, and Gene Siskel gave it thumbs down. I mean, that, you got to fucking kidding me. But then again, the previous year he gave Silence of the Lambs a thumbs down. What are you going to do? Even the great critics screw up every now and then. But that got Billy Bob not only noticed, but it got him more work, and it gave him the opportunity to write, direct, and star in what became Sling Blade. Now, Sling Blade to me is a very difficult film. It is a fantastic performance by Billy Bob, like an epic performance. You can't do it any better. He created this character of Carl Childers, I think was his name. He creates this character who is so weird and quirky, and he's got a lot of tics. He's got a lot of issues. He had killed his mom and the mom's lover when he was a boy. You know, a lot of folks call it a Kaiser blade. I call it a sling blade. The film is really very, very difficult, but it feels real. And it does not seem like an actor playing a role. It feels like this is really this guy. It is an amazing performance. And in a year of Tom Cruise, who should have won the Oscar for Jerry Maguire, the Oscar for Best Actor that year went to Jeffrey Rush for Shine. But I feel like Billy Bob probably got the second biggest number of votes, and not Tom Cruise. I think the Oscar was just stolen from Cruise. But, you know, and of course I just mentioned him, Cameron Crowe. That was his film, Jerry Maguire. But Billy Bob did not win Best Actor. And the problem I have, and I love Jeffrey Rush. Jeffrey Rush is awesome. He's so great in Shakespeare in Love. He's fantastic in The Tailor of Panama with Pierce Brosnan and Jamie Lee Curtis. He is an end-boss level performer. But it's a supporting role in Shine. And Billy Bob rivets us to our seats from the first frame of Sling Blade. As I say, I don't love that movie, but Billy Bob won the Oscar not for actor, but for screenplay. He won for screenplay for films released in 1996. So that's not the film that I want to talk about. On Billy Bob's birthday, and again, if the name is not ringing a bell, you probably have seen commercials for him because he is the star of a series, I want to say it's on Showtime, called Landman. And he did a series a little bit before that called Goliath. So he is somebody who has worked steadily. He's one of Angelina Jolie's ex-husbands. She was with Johnny Lee Miller. Love the guy in Trainspotting. They made a movie Hackers together in the mid-90s, which got a lot of play. Early phase hackers, right? Literally and figuratively and symbolically. But Billy Bob has never stopped working. He was pretty close to the A-list. He did that movie Bandits with Bruce Willis and Cate Blanchett. He had a lot of high-profile roles in the 90s. Primary Colors with John Travolta and Emma Thompson. He plays the chief of staff. He's kind of the James Carville of that movie. But in my opinion, his finest film, if I'm asked, what's the best film? This is a birthday episode, and you like to do where it's somebody's birthday instead of just doing a general recap of their life, especially if you don't know who this guy is. Well, what's the best movie he was ever in? It's Sam Raimi's 1998, A Simple Plan. A Simple Plan is a film that I saw in theaters with my father and my sister. We had a little bit of a tradition where we would go to the movies either on Christmas or New Year's Eve or something in that ballpark. We saw The Green Mile the following year, 1999. But Christmas, it might have been Christmas Eve. We went to the Broadway Mall, Hicksville. Movie theater had been open about 3 years at that point, three and a half years. And the reviews of A Simple Plan were through the roof. Like, this was a masterpiece. I want to say that Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars, 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert. This film is in the 90s on Rotten Tomatoes. And it has elements of Fargo. And in fact, Sam Raimi asked the Coen brothers, supposedly, I don't know that he actually asked them, but the story goes that because he was shooting in what was supposed to be snowy terrain and an area where the snow isn't going to melt because it's really fucking cold here most of the time. The Coen brothers supposedly gave Sam Raimi some tips and some ideas on how to shoot in snow and how to shoot the snow and the snow-capped trees. There are ways, there are angles, there are filters to put on the camera. There are all these sorts of things that even someone like myself would never have. You just shoot it, right? Just shoot me. No, just put the camera on, just turn it on, and let's get the right angle and go from there. A simple plan, though, is a story about greed, but it's also a story of, is there ever a time where, in the words of Michael Douglas's Gordon Gekko, is there ever a time where greed is good and greed is right? And it gives us a fantastic moral dilemma. And you almost would like to see these characters have a different run out where they weren't facing the particular set of problems they're facing in the world of this film to see if they would have behaved exactly the same way. So you have somebody who died way too young in Bill Paxton. I can't believe Bill Paxton's been gone 10 years. It's just, it's mind-boggling to me that he's gone that long already. Just awful. Bill Paxton and Bridget Fonda, who also left the movie business not long after this. I mean, nobody has seen her. She appeared in public and people were freaking out because she didn't look like a movie star anymore. OMG. They did the same nonsense with Kelly McGillis showing how, yeah, and she's younger than Tom Cruise. You know what? Fuck you. Let people be, right? Anyway, so Bridget Fonda and Bill Paxton play a young couple. I guess they're supposed to be in their mid-30s. And they have, Bridget Fonda is pregnant. And Bill Paxton is a CPA, like my old man. But he does not work for, let's say, a mid-size accounting firm. He's not a partner at a small firm or a mid-size firm. He's just a guy working for someone else. And we get the idea early in the film that he's not making anywhere near enough money to do anything other than barely pay his bills, because the wife is pregnant and she's going through enough of a difficult pregnancy where she can't really do any work. So it's on him. Billy Bob Thornton plays Bill Paxton's brother. And we get the idea that they don't have a particularly close relationship. They may not even be on good terms. And this movie gets into the idea, is blood always thicker than water? And if you have somebody who you consider to be, let's say, a best friend, and if they are in opposition to your brother, who you maybe don't even like or have never been close to, or you felt that he got all the advantages or any advantages and you just kept getting the short end of the stick, who would you back in an argument? Who would you back if both of their lives were at stake? Would you be on the side of your friend, or is blood always thicker than water and you would have to take the side of your brother? Fuck that guy, because this is family. And this movie gets into a lot of that because early in the film, there is a single-engine plane crash in the middle of the snowy wilderness forest that I alluded to with the Coen brothers reference of Fargo. There is a plane crash. Now, normally, let's say, for example, Bill Paxton's character goes out there to investigate the plane crash, and it would just be a question of, is anyone still alive? What happened? How did this happen? And you assess the damage. You know, thank goodness it didn't land on his house a la Donnie Darko a couple of years later, anything surrealist like that. Well, the people in the plane they're dead. But there is a lot of money in this plane. Somebody had probably been engaging in some illegal activities, because you're carrying around, let's just say, $1 million or something close to, or maybe over $1 million in cash. My feeling is that this is not legally gotten tender, that somehow there is chicanery and there's drugs involved. And I think there are drugs involved in this instance. So you ask yourself a question. If you are the only person who knows about this, what do? Do you just take the money and run? And what if this money actually does belong to somebody? What if this is not stolen loot, and whoever comes to collect the remains of the person or people in the plane, what if they say, what happened to the money? Let's investigate there must be people around here. Somebody probably stumbled on this plane and took the money for themselves. So it's not like you could just take it. Now, Bill Paxton, his character is smart enough where he runs all of these permutations through the mental meat grinder. And his brother, Billy Bob's character, gets involved, and they decide that they're going to try to take the money and divvy it up, despite the inherent risks involved. And then there is another character, Billy Bob's friend, and there is a very great old character actor, he wasn't really that old, who had been with Gene Hackman in Hoosiers, Chelsea Ross. Chelsea Ross' character in this movie, it's such a great performance by him, and I know you don't know the name, because he comes across like a guy who is always suspicious. And when someone's always suspicious, just in general, as the audience, whenever we see them in a movie where there is a lot of really bad stuff going on, but we're kind of rooting for them to be able to make a clean getaway, such as it is. But the Chelsea Ross character seems to always be on to them. He never comes out and says it, but he's always hinting at, I know something is going on here, and you boys better be real careful what you do. So there's a really sad scene in the film, and Billy Bob's character is so broken down that he has glasses and he couldn't even afford another pair of frames, that the glasses were busted, and he put them back together with regular Scotch tape. It's just so bad. I think it was actually electrician's tape. And he tries to give, there's a moment in the film where he gives a gift to a character, and it doesn't go well, and you can't help but feel horrible for him. Now, this character is not as damaged as Carl in Sling Blade, but he's a distant cousin. And the performance is so good that Billy Bob got another Oscar nomination, although he didn't win. I don't know who won Best Supporting Actor in 1998. That was a year, that was obviously a big year. Saving Private Ryan, Tom Hanks, and who else was nominated? I don't even remember. It's Joseph Fiennes. I don't think he was up for Shakespeare in Love. But anyway, for sure, Ian McKellen for Gods and Monsters. But I don't know about Best Supporting Actor. But Billy Bob was nominated. And you feel this character. It doesn't have, there's no movie star anything in Billy Bob's performance. Bill Paxton doesn't get to play that. I don't think the character is that interesting. He becomes more interesting as the film goes along. And I guess the idea is that this is a guy, just a regular Joe, no criminal record. He's an accountant. He's a loving husband, and he hopes to be a loving father. And he's thrust into this crazy situation where it almost turns into a weird variation on 10 Little Indians, where you keep saying to yourself, who else is still alive that could tie me into this? Who else is still around who in some way could keep me or us, whoever the us might be, from getting away with it? And almost every scene with Billy Bob is gutting, and it, again, doesn't feel like he's playing a character. It feels like this is really this guy's brother. And, me saying that Bill Paxton's character is not that interesting, it's not a knock on his performance, because Bill Paxton has that kind of monotone voice, which in certain roles was perfect, because he does things, Bill Paxton's character, in this movie that you can't believe when you met this guy at the beginning that he could do this. But when it comes to your own family and the idea that we may not have to worry about money for maybe for the rest of our lives, how far are you willing to go? And he's willing to go a lot further than he maybe would have imagined if he was just randomly asked questions about, what would you do if this happened? What would you do if that happened? That's the thing with life. You don't know how you're going to react to a theoretical circumstance. So if somebody were to say, if you found $1 million in a Cessna There had been a crash. Everyone's dead. There's $1 million cash and there's heroin, there's cocaine, whatever else there might be in there. What would you do? Well, I'm pretty sure that I am going to call the police and I'm not going to touch anything in there. Now, if you ask the question, if you were going through a financial hardship, would you do the same thing? Well, I like to think that I would, but maybe I would do exactly what Bill does in this film. And as the story unfolds and things just keep going downhill, and it's unusual to have a movie where the characters start at a relatively low point. They're not starting up here and having a great fall. They're starting like here and trying to maybe go up to there, but you take a step forward, you take 2 steps backward. You take a step forward, you take 3 steps backward. You try to stay in neutral and you go down further. And this is a film that is heavy in symbolism, but not the conventional kind. I don't mean the shot composition or that sort of stuff, because I used to do that. I get that. But this film is heavy in symbolism and heavy in the idea of there are situations that seem too good to be true. And even if you really think this could be a heaven-sent lucky break, if your instinct is this can't be right, this can't be real, and this can't be the ticket to some level of security. If you said all of those things as the characters in this film, all said one form or another, not using the same language, but they're all saying the same things. If you're saying that, you're probably right, because your first instinct is probably correct. And maybe you ought to just call the authorities. Maybe you should just call somebody. Hey, there's a plane crasher. Even if you saw the money, you saw the drugs, we don't have to tell them that you saw anything, because there's a version of this story where, let's just say that money did belong to someone and it's not who you think. And if you attempt to spend it or launder it or do anything, you run a very high risk of spending the rest of your life behind bars. So with the idea that somebody probably belongs to this money and they're going to come looking for it, it adds another layer of tragedy to a story that it's a thriller. This is a slow burn thriller. This is not an action film. This is not an up-tempo kind of a movie. And it's not a black comedy in the manner of Fargo. A Simple Plan has hardly any laughs. I don't remember laughing once. And we saw it in theaters with a very crowded theater. And I was excited because I loved the movie, as did my dad. My sister was about 15 at the time. She thought it was terrific also. My expectation was the film was going to be a box office success. Now, Sam Raimi went on to do the Tobey Maguire Superman movies. But as of 1998, 97, 98, he wasn't as well known. He had done the Evil Dead trilogy, Army of Darkness, and he had a couple of other films I'm blanking on. Darkman. I'm sorry, he did Darkman with Liam Neeson. But there were a lot of people in that theater, and my expectation was the film was going to do okay at the box office. But I looked up, and I didn't know this. I tried to at least do a little bit of research before talking. I don't want to be completely off base. But this movie didn't even gross back its production cost, and that is really unfortunate. But I guess it was a tough sell, and as much as people such as myself, Gen Xers, we love Bill Paxton, Bridget Fonda, Billy Bob Thornton, the names aren't going to get people into the seats. And I don't know what else was playing at that particular junction. Private Ryan. Well, Shakespeare in Love was playing, and that ended up being a hit. But the ads, I guess, didn't make people want to, plunk down their $7.50 or whatever it was back then to go into the theaters and see the film. So it's unfortunate that it was not a box office success, because it is beautifully directed and really brilliantly acted. And, Bridget Fonda's character, she's kind of it's presented in a bit of an unsympathetic way, in the sense that she's very intelligent. And this is something you don't see very often in movies, where you have characters who are clearly very smart, but they keep giving other people terrible advice. Now, does that mean they're stupid? I don't know. But she gives advice that under other circumstances would probably be good advice. But in the world of this movie, everything she says turns bad. You want to shout to Bill Paxton, don't listen to her. Yeah, but it's his wife. I know, but she's wrong. This is not a good idea. Don't do this. So the character that Bill plays, he goes through an enormous number of trials. And at the very end, without spoiling the ending, you get an idea that this was almost like Sisyphus pushing that rock uphill only to have to start from scratch at the bottom. And it really is a story of trying to advance when you haven't earned it, and it's not going to work out the way that you dream that it would. And you may end up doing things that will haunt you for the rest of your life, assuming that you still have one. You're not going to just be able to shrug it off and move on. And some of Bill's finest film acting in his last scene with Billy Bob, I won't spoil it, but it is a beautiful moment of, it's almost like the "You broke my heart, Fredo" in Godfather. It's not obviously the same kind of stakes, but it's a moment like that where the brothers, one has had the back of the other, and now he's going to have the back of the other again, but in a really horrendous, awful, gut-wrenching sort of way. And how Bill plays that scene, he was never nominated for an Oscar, but what a terrific actor in this movie, of course, Aliens, in movies like Frailty, and with Tom Cruise in Edge of Tomorrow. I mean, he's a fucking riot in that film. He was kind of under-repped as far as how versatile an actor he could be. He had the TV show where he was the bigamist, Big Love. I didn't really get into that, but a lot of people said he was phenomenal. I know he got a lot of acclaim for that. But Billy Bob Thornton did not write. Maybe he wrote a little of his own dialogue. That part I don't know. But Billy Bob Thornton, a real character, a brilliant actor, a fantastic writer. I mean, he could have won Best Screenplay for One False Move. In fact, if Siskel and Ebert, you could go check out their review on YouTube of that film. If they had been voting on that, I think that they probably would have had his screenplay winning the Best Screenplay, where the Billy Bob would have had 2. But winning that for Sling Blade, an independent film kind of coming out of nowhere, that was really something, all the acclaim. And yeah, he could have won Best Actor. I do think that he probably was second in votes behind Jeffrey Rush. Supporting performance, he doesn't show up until 30 minutes of the movie Shine are left. But I hope that Billy Bob, despite the ups and downs of his personal life, he's been married either 3 or 4 times, but I hope that Billy Bob has had a happy 70th birthday. He is a distinctive talent, a brilliant writer, and a phenomenal actor. And as we've seen, he's just as good in TV as he was in so many classic films. Hey, Pushing Tin with Angelina, his bride back then, and John Cusack, a great movie. A movie about air traffic controllers on Long Island. I mean, that's just great stuff. I remember when that film was coming out, and a lot of the air traffic controllers at Kennedy and LaGuardia were interviewed, and some of them even were in small roles in the film. But happy 70th birthday to a real original and a natural character, Billy Bob Thornton. And if you haven't seen A Simple Plan, I think this is the best representation of just what a home run film actor Billy Bob still is. This has been episode 590 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your Monday evening here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace.